Good morning. Today's special guest is Craig Heap. Craig, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and what you've been doing?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you so much for having me on. I think what you've been doing over the past 100 days has been absolutely fantastic because you get to share the knowledge across a broad spectrum of athletes, coaches and different backgrounds. So my background is a bit of a giveaway. It's not highboard diving. I used to do gymnastics. I competed well over 10 years internationally. I did gymnastics for 20 years. I've won 14 British titles. I've competed in 5 world and European championships. I captained England to their first ever men's Commonwealth Games team gold medal in Kuala Lumpur in 1998. 4 years later in Manchester in the 2002 Games, I captained the England men's team again to another team gold. But for me, my greatest experience in life was competing at the 2000 Olympic Games.
Okay, Craig, why was that one such a special event, apart from the fact that it was the Olympics?
Well, I think every athlete dreams of becoming an Olympian or Paralympian, whether it's summer or winter games. And I think from probably what most athletes talk about, it's the journey to get into something which consumes your life. And it does, you know, if you're an elite athlete, sportsman or coach, for example, it consumes your life. You've got to live it. You've got to breathe it. It's 24 hours a day. You don't just knock off at 5 o'clock and go, well, that's me done. I'm back tomorrow morning. You know, you need to think about what you do after training so that you're ready and prepared for the next day. So, yeah, I think for me, getting to the Olympics was definitely something I never dreamed of as a kid. But as I slowly progressed, I would say I'm probably a slow burner. Not very talented, you might say, and we're going to come on to a little bit of talent later on and what does that look like. And then 6 weeks before we're due to fly out to the Sydney Olympics, I fell off the parallel bars, probably not my greatest hour, and I broke this hand in 2 places. So I didn't think I was going to go. So that was a bit of a frantic and quite emotional time. And then when I got to the games, I guess like a lot of athletes, we go there searching for our best performance, you know, and for me, I'm quite realistic, and I think all sports people are. And I always talk when I'm doing like a goal setting session. Yes, it's great to have big dreams, but the problem is when you have these really big dreams, if you've got that many of them, what can happen is you can constantly fail, and that will have a knock-on effect to your confidence. So I think it's really key that, you know, you have daily goals, weekly goals, monthly goals, you know, yearly goals, and then you have your dreams. So for me, obviously, a big dream would to win an Olympic medal. But because I'm quite realistic and I'm into my planning, I realised, you know, to go to the games and win an Olympic medal would be pretty unrealistic. But for me, it would be realistic to go and perform and hit my personal best. So gymnastics, I guess, is, you know, like a lot of sports, you can set a time or you can set a score. I mean, probably gymnastics is a little bit subjective because the judges have to evaluate what you do and then they interpret it and give you a score. Where some sports, I think it's probably a little bit easier to plan. So let's say it be swimming 100 metres or you run 100 metres. You've got a benchmark, something that you can aim for and you can monitor it every day. But within gymnastics, it's a little bit more complicated. But I'd worked out from every competition that I'd done, if I took my best score from each piece of apparatus, and there are 6 pieces in men's gymnastics and 4 for the women's, I'd worked out that I could score 55.3. And I remember a coach that was part of the centralised programme at the time, and he said to me, Craig, there's absolutely no chance you'll break 55. You're not good enough. And this is a little bit about my character. And I think all sports people are a bit like this. We like to prove people wrong. And I'd done all my calculations, and I'd worked out that I could get 55.3. So I said to this coach, well, I think I can do 55. No chance. Anyhow, I got my personal best, and I scored 55.343. And so, yes, there's a bit of realism in there, but there's also a lot of planning that goes into that. you know, and I think when we set these targets and goals, we have to base it on something. And I know that's something you do a lot of work of. So where did I finish in the Olympics? I was 32nd in Sydney. And, you know, when I go to schools, the kids are always wanting to have photographs with these gold medals. But this is one I always keep in my pocket. This is my favourite by miles. This is my commemorative medal from the Sydney Olympics. And that was the day I became an Olympian. So from being this skinny, puny little kid at 9 years of age, growing up on his parents' farm in Burnley and Lancashire, it was that journey to becoming an Olympian and hitting my PB, which stands out, you know, greater than anything I've ever done.
Brilliant, Craig. Thanks for that. And I love that, because we were talking earlier about stories, and I love telling stories, but hearing stories as well. And a couple of things I just want to pull out on there, which I think are really vital cues for anybody who's watching this, no matter what sport that they're doing. One is expectations. You have to manage the expectations about where you really are. And I see so many athletes that I work with, and, you know, their parents who think they're already at the Premiership football player. They already think they've been to the Olympics. And I'm like, yeah, you're 8-year-old. Just let's get a little bit of reality, a bit of honesty here. Let's see where we're at and where we can get better. And that journey from 8-year-old to maybe the Olympics might be another 20 years for some athletes. So I'm already talking with some of the athletes that I'm working with about 2028, 2032 Olympics. And they're already, you know, at 18 years of age, 20 years of age. And that's the length of time that it's going to take. At 8-year-old, you've got no chance. And we will talk about talent. So I love that expectations. I also like the fact that the planning side of things is key, and planning the emotional side of things. And as you know, in terms of the conversations we've had over the years, is some of the stuff that I work on is understanding those emotions. And I think that we don't do that very well. And in sport, we fail regularly. So as a kid, how do you cope, or how did you cope, Craig, when that coach just went, you're not good enough to do 35?
Well, I think it's really interesting because I, a bit like you, I like reading books on stuff. And to be honest, I wish I'd have had somebody like you when I was doing my gymnastic career, or had the, you know, the capacity to think actually reading books is really knowledgeable. And there's a book I was reading, it said you shouldn't get yourself a mentor, you should get yourself a tormentor, which I thought was quite good, because actually all the way through my life, certainly in the early years, I was tormented. I was tormented because I was doing gymnastics in an all-boys school. I was tormented by coaches, said I was never good enough, whether it's when I first got on the national team, or whether it was when I was British champion, that this person says that. And I think, you know, you have to have that ability of self-belief, you know, of being able to prove you wrong. Where does it come from? I honestly don't know. Is it that work ethic? You know, and I think some of the athletes will be watching this. And the question I'll pose to them right now is, you know, we've been in lockdown for 100 days, right? What have you done in that 100 days? You know, and I know for a fact that if my gym had been closed, me and my coach would have found a way to have trained, yeah? And that would have come from me, you know. And I think, and I've heard a few stories, and I'm just not going to mention names, but the opportunity has been there for some athletes to go and train, and they've gone, nah, you're all right, you know. And I think as you start, you know, it's very much at an early years, it is coach led, an athlete. But then as time goes on, you know, it's the other way around, isn't it? I think it should be driven by the athlete then to lead, and the coach gives the information. And I think you're right there, Graham, when you're talking about, you know, from 8 years of age to competing in your 20s, it's a massive journey. And I think we slightly, I mean, I coached for a while and I stopped coaching now. I mean, I've set up this centre and it's all about fun and learning the fundamentals, and then go off later on and specialise. But my philosophy was, why do you want to have a British champion at 8, 9, 10 years of age? Why not wait and have an Olympian, you know, in 10, 15 years? you know, and it is the world we live in. We're absolutely obsessed with social media now, and likes, and it's instant. I mean, we were just having a little chat about this before, because we've recently done a couple of virtual awards events and presentations, and as a presenter, your interaction comes from your audience. So if you stood up in front of 50 people, 100, 200, whatever it is, you can look people in the eye and you get the feedback of going, oh my God, that was terrible. Or,
Yeah.
you know, if you look for a smiley face, you know you're doing something right. And this is where I think it's really tough for young athletes and young people, is because it's all virtual now. People don't need to go out to find this gratification. You know, it's, if you do something, you get a like on your social media account, everybody feels great. But then the negative things that you probably have to deal with your athletes a lot more is, what happens if nobody likes me? What happens if I don't get a like? You know, and it's the same, I think, you know, throughout sport. You know, you need to have that like from your coach and the feedback, you know, because you think, oh yeah, that's great. But I think we are going into a generation now where they're more interested in what the social media side states, maybe rather than listening to what the coach is telling them.
Yeah.
You know, and I think the two, and certainly I see it in gymnastics now, it's massive. We've got some really high profile athletes in the world of gymnastics. And with that, I mean, there was a documentary recently on Niall Wilson, who's probably got the biggest following on YouTube than any of the British gymnasts. But comes that is the headspace worry, you know, and are you doing it because, you know, you started doing gymnastics because you like throwing yourself about? Are you doing it because of all your fans? You know, and another thing, I mean, I don't know how the footballers are coping, but I just switched on to the Everton-Liverpool match last night, you know, and a lot of these seem to be 0-0 draws, you know, and they're playing in crowd music. And I wonder how the performance is a lot less because you haven't got the audience.
Tell you what, that's a really good point. Now, I was thinking about the football yesterday before we move on, and I was thinking about it from a linesman's point of view. Because actually linesmen feel the pressure of the crowd. And I wonder how many times they get the decision more right because there's now no longer that pressure from the crowd. But obviously from a player's point of view, that's the stuff that drives you. That's the stuff that you thrive on a little bit. And I've always said I'd lose my wife playing tennis at the local park with nobody watching easily because I'm not interested. My mind's not there. Stick me in front of a couple of thousand people and on TV playing tennis, and I loved that. I always found that in me. That was my big driver. I just didn't enjoy the isolation kind of stuff. So talking about character, talking about emotions are key. And the more we understand about ourselves, the more we can start to work on what I need to do. And when you're talking about what have you done in isolation, like you said, for us, 100 days in Shieldon yesterday, and we haven't left the house. So I'm going to do a little plug for the RVI here because when Jessica was born, we spent a lot of time there. So I'm running 365 miles for the RVI this year. I've now done over 120 miles just in my garden. Thanks. And I hate running.
You must have a massive garden if you've run 120 miles.
You know what it is? I haven't. I have to do, I 3 miles is probably my limit before, one, the body starts to break, and two, the brain starts to break as well. So 3 miles, I've worked it out, is 230, I think it is, or 220 reverse shuttles.
Good on you.
Yeah, but it's just a mind thing.
Yeah,
and again, that comes from inside. There's a driver there. My driver is doing it for the RVI and doing it for the charity, and I have to get out and do it. It's not for me. But I think you're right. As an athlete, at some stage of this, and we're going to move on to this talent stuff, at some stage of this talent equation, whatever we want to define it as, there has to be something inside that you want to do it for you.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think when you're young, it's quite difficult to find that in a young person.
Yeah.
And I think it comes as you get older, you know, and you start to sample success. Because let's face it, you know, you don't step out in front of 10,000 people in your first ever gymnastic competition. You know, I think, you know, we had hardly any crowds. It was your parent and the pet dog, and that was it. And So you might go to a competition and actually you don't like performing in front of a crowd. You know, I think what happens over time is the masses get whittled down to the people that are really serious. So yes, I know some really good gymnasts that could perform well in this surrounding because we practice routine. Yeah. And I was a bit devious, you know. I realised I'd play a few mind games with some of the guys. You know, I'd get off the rings or the high bar and I'd go, ooh, that bar's a bit slippy. And I'd know full well it'd be perfect for me. But then it sort of that, you know, and subconsciously, you know, and if you've probably done something around the chimp paradox and the inner chimp of all these other gymnasts waiting to go would be going, is that bar slippy? Craig says it's slippy. It must be slippy. You know, I go, oh, that floor's not very springy. You know, and I think these are the things that as you go through time, that happened to me as a young kid. And I go, oh, it must be slippy because he's the best in here. You know, and as it's only go as you get older and you become more confident in your ability. And I think that's really key. The hours and hours that you do in the gym are really important because it's building that confidence inside yourself. And what really gets me, and I've seen this, you know, at a gym not long ago before lockdown, a girl came in and she's jumping down the fast track, you know, and she's practicing with really poor technique. And I said, what you need to do is, I set up a few stations and she found it really hard. And I said, but the problem is, and I guess this is the same in psychology, Graham, but I'm nowhere near as qualified to speak about it as you are. But unless you get the basics and the fundamentals right, you will always hit a limit.
Yeah.
You know, and I said, what you've done, and this is the worst thing about, for me, is I would get phone calls when I was coaching and go, my little Billy's fantastic at gymnastics. He's jumping all over the place. He's self-taught himself a back somersault on the trampoline outside. And I'll go, oh, no. And I'll look because, yes, well done for teaching yourself that. But generally, it will be really poor technique. Yeah. And it makes your job as a coach really difficult. Not only because you've got to get it technically right, but for a young person, you've got to say to them, whoa, your back somersaults, yeah, you've learnt it, but it's not that good. And we need to go back to the beginning. Well, nobody wants to go backwards, and especially a kid that's learnt the trick of a back somersault because it impresses all the mate. And then you go, actually, we need to go and do a bit of conditioning because you can't hold the correct shape, or you've not got the ability to move your arms in the right path, you know, and your legs, they're buckling because you've got no physical preparation. And so it's really tough, I think, you know, of coaching people to say, you know what, you've got to go backwards. You've got to start again. And actually, that happened to me as a British champion. A Russian coach came in, Nikolai Liskovich, and he was going down the line. You know, it was all right. Got to me and he said to me, Craig, you know, your gymnastics is rubbish. You know, first of all, then the inner chimp, all defensive. Like, what do you mean? Who's this clown talking to me? Does he know who he's talking to? I'm the best here. You know, and probably a little bit lost in translation, but what he meant was my fundamentals and my basics were not good enough to get to where I wanted to be. And I spent months with this guy right at the start. Yeah. And yet he turned out to be the best coach that I've ever had in my career. Yeah. And I always think, you know, from a coach's point of view, if you can explain that a bit better, you know, and obviously his English wasn't that great, and say, you know, where do you want to go? And yeah, that's great, but we need to work on a few of these things first because you're always going to get left behind. And I think that's common in every sport, yeah, where technique is so important. And certainly, I'll just pick up what you said before, Graham, about the mind. I think this is something that we do not focus enough on, because when you look at all these little things put together, the marginal gains, as we call them, yeah, and I'll say I'll ask athletes I'm working with, say, you know, how important is it to be physically fit? You know, and they'll go, you know, rate it, and they go, wow, you know, it's 100%, you know, you've got to be. And I said, right, well, when you're on the blocks or wherever you lift your arm to present your routine, how important is it to be mentally ready to perform under that pressure? And they'll go, oh, I never thought about that. So I said, is it equally important, you know, or is it more important? Because you could be the best physically prepared athlete, and these are the ones that you come to you, Graham, that can't perform. So actually, being physically fit is nowhere as important as being able to step out in front of 1,000 people, raising the game, as you said, playing the wife against tennis. I'm the same. If I go and play five-a-side, I have no interest. I go for a run around. But put people watching, and then it's a little bit different.
Yeah. And I think
that's the bit.
If you could do the same thing with emotions and performance psychology, sports psychology, mindset, whatever you want to call it, I think if we change the terminology and the wording, we get kids to buy into it, we get parents to buy into it. Instead of them coming to me and going, Graham, I've lost my confidence, I can't perform, which I don't believe. You can still perform. If there's just something in your head that's telling you that, or the bars are slippy, or something in your head telling you that, that I think we can start to build. And we build character, we build emotions, but we set people the right sample for when they get to that stage that they're able to cope, instead of just going, Graham, I'm broke, because you're not. Nobody's broke. Nobody is mentally unstable in the world of sport. Nobody just can't perform at a high level. You don't lose the ability to do your rings overnight. You don't lose the ability to technically hit a forehand. What you lose the ability is to feel confidence in your own level. And the one thing I loved about your story, Craig, about the Olympics is that you actually didn't compete that much higher than what you could compete at. But what you did is you maximized your ability on that day, and you actually scored a little bit higher than the score that you had actually worked out. And that's all you can do. You have to be able to perform at your level, and people perform so much lower than their own ability level on the bigger stage because they just haven't banked enough time on managing their own emotions and their own performance mindset.
Well, I think that's really key, actually. And you think about that, because I have a really good friend who was an Olympic swimmer, you know, and he had big expectations to go out to the Olympics, probably medal, and he finished 7th, you know, and he had an absolute nightmare. And he came back and it hit him really bad mentally, you know, and he put all his kit in the loft, packed it all away. And for him, his Olympics wasn't a great experience. And yet, and this is the thing about success, you know, I was 32nd, and I remember coming back from the Olympics thinking, you know, I felt like I was the Olympic champion, you know, and I was in the same group as the Russian gymnast Alexei Nemov that won in that games. And he was jumping up and down with his coach, you know, and me and my coach were jumping up and down, you know, and I could see these 25,000 people in the Sydney Superdome thinking, somebody better tell that crazy British guy he's 29 places off winning any medal, you know. And I think this is really key, is to your mental health and well-being. Is this where do we see ourselves, you know, and manage those expectations. And I remember I sent a gymnast to you a while back, Thomas, and I remember having a conversation. So this is a gymnast, he's on the high bar, which is over there, and his fear was letting go to do a back somersault. And I said, you need to get a bit of help around this. And I pointed him in your direction. And it's really funny because I said to him at the time, I said, this is what gymnastics is all about. It is a sport around fear. Because once you've conquered your fear to do a back somersault, guess what? You'll have to learn a straight back somersault or a double somersault. And I said, unless you as a person can overcome that, you know, gymnastics is not for you. And it's the same you know, I wouldn't make a 10-meter platform diver because, yes, I can somersault, but I'm terrified of heights. And as good as you are, Graham, you won't get me on that diving board, you know. And likewise, in school, I was so passionate about basketball, but I'm 5'6". I'm not going to be playing basketball at that elite level. So I think you're right. We have to manage our expectations around what we want to do So are we physically and genetically capable to do that sport? You know, I was talking to somebody yesterday when I was doing this stream, and they said, what was the coolest thing about the Olympics? And I said, the dining room. And they went, why the dining room? I said, because every athlete has to go and eat there, you know, and gymnastics is a bit like the freaks of nature, because you look and you've got every shape and size going to man, you know, from the volleyball players at 7 foot to the gymnasts, you know, they go down to 4'11". You know, well, there's no way my genetics would make me an Olympic high-level basketball player. So I'm suited either for gymnastics or horse riding or whatever, you know. And so going back to Thomas, since he's seen you and he's going on with gymnastics, the back somersault's gone. No problem at all. He's now doing a double back off the high bar. It's just one of those things. When I would imagine in a bit there'll be another obstacle. You know, I've got to be able to do this. Oh, I'm a bit scared about this, you know, and the fear is there, you know, constantly. And it's about seeking advice through coaches or people like yourself so we can manage those. You know, for another person, it might not be the bar. It might be stepping out in front of those people, you know, which I think is a little bit easier manageable.
And a lot of it's about terms of reference, and I don't want to throw any theory into these YouTube channel discussions, but there's a lot of research that's been done regarding Olympic podiums. And if you have a look at the picture of the person who's got the gold medal, they're all kind of like, I got my gold medal, how happy am I? If you look at the guy who's second, tends to be a little bit like, I got second. But the guy who's third is also like, so because the term of reference is that the second guy thinks, oh my God, I was so close to winning a gold medal.
Yeah.
He's not as happy. The guy who's third's like, oh my God, I nearly didn't medal. Get in. I could have finished fourth and not been here. So the term of reference is key. So a lot of research was done about that. And if you have a look at it, and again, for people who are watching, next time they're looking at podiums, see how smiley the first and the third guy is. But actually, your term of reference was you had to finish at the amount of points that you'd given yourself. You did that. That was your term of reference. That's why you were super happy on that occasion.
Yeah, I think that's a really good thing, actually. And on that as well, you can have somebody that comes in from nowhere and wins a medal. Because if we look back in Rio at the gymnastics team, I mean, they did phenomenal. I think we got about 6, 7 medals. And we're expected a couple. I mean, one of the moments of those games for me was our trampolinist, Bryony Page, because she qualified into the top 8 in about 7th place. And I remember I was doing radio for 5 Live at that event. And the person I'm working with saying, Craig, you have to battle to get on air. And you said, you need to tell them that we're going to win a medal here, you know, and I'm going, look, I'm not being funny. I'm supposed to be the expert. I don't want to shout saying somebody's going to win a medal when she qualified, you know, in 7th. I said, you know, it's pretty unrealistic. Anyhow, so you go in reverse order. Well, she went up 2nd and banged out the most amazing routine ever. And I'm thinking, I'm on it. Get him on the line. Get him on the line. We're going to win a medal. Get on the line. And right until the last person went, she was in the number 1 spot.
Yeah.
And she picked up a silver medal. Well, the emotion, I mean, you could see on the podium. And I think when things like that happen, which is outside the box, I mean, we have the same as well with the Northeast girl, Amy Tinkler.
Yeah.
3rd spot. Picked up that bronze medal. It sort of came from nowhere. Like you say, oh my God. You know, and I think people might say, oh, well, something happened. You've got to be in it to win it. You know, and I think if you're in a final of 8 gymnasts, you know, or whatever it is, you know, with the adrenaline, with all the people there, we see these amazing things in sport happen. And that's what I really love about sport, because you have these unknown people just come, and they do come and go, unfortunately. It's very rare that these people have this amazing performance and come back. You know, it might be a one-off. I mean, you talk about consistency. I mean, we've got Max Whitlock, but before that, Beth Tweddle. I mean, she should have really won the bars, uneven bars in London, and she finished third. But I think she was a bit like this. She staggered back on the dismount and could have easily fallen over and ended up with no medal.
Yeah.
A bit like she had that error in Beijing. So that was in her mind. So yes, if she'd have stuck that landing, without doubt, I put my life on it, she would have been Olympic champion. But you see her on the podium thinking, it could have been a lot worse. I got to, because that was the only medal that was missing, world and European champion, you know, absolutely amazing. So I just think it's really interesting when you look at people on the podium, you're right, look at them, but then if you do a bit more research, their emotion around that.
Yeah, no, really good. So we haven't defined talent yet, but I think we've talked about it loads, in the fact that there's got to be some ability in there. There's maybe some stuff that you come from your parents and stuff like that. There's got to be some emotional stuff. There's got to be maybe some passion, some drive there. If you could define it in terms of, right, there is the Craig Heap definition of what talent is. And I know over the last 10, 15 years, sport especially has done a little bit better than trying to define what talent is, the word, because the word does my head in sometimes, especially with parents and with kids. And when I'm going, oh, little Johnny is so talented. Well, he's not really. He learned to do a backflip in his back garden. Yeah, well played him. But he's got some ability, but he's not necessarily talented. How would you define it?
Well, I'm going to throw you a bit of a curveball, because I'm a bit. I don't believe in the word talent.
Hold on, let me give you some hand clapping. Do you see it?
Yeah. And it was only when I read Matthew Syed's Black Bounce, and then he did a follow up of Black Box Thinking. Yeah. So what he talks about, it's pretty standard in sport, is this 10,000 hour rule. And so you probably know, a few people will, but people that are tuning in might not know. So what experts say is that to become an expert at something, you must do it for 10,000 hours. And interesting enough, if you want to become an expert coach, it's actually double that. It's 20,000 hours. And so then I suppose the question, well, you know, I've been driving my car, and I'm 47 this year, so nearly 30 years. I've easily done 10,000 hours. You'll probably be not far off that when you do all the running in your garden.
Thanks.
So I say to the kids I'm working with, or people with, well, why does that not make me Lewis Hamilton? You know, because I've been driving for those 10,000 hours. And because it's not guaranteed. And there's a few factors, really, you know, when I'm driving one, I'm not driving a racing car. Even though I'm thinking about the road, I'm thinking about other things. Certainly being a father of 2 young kids, I'm like, I wonder what sort of day it's going to be, you know, what headaches you're going to get into. You know, as I'm driving here today, I'm thinking, will I be able to get the computer to work? So I'm concentrating on the road, but I'm not giving it 100%.
Yeah.
Now, when I did my gymnastics and I was centralized training, it was 100%. I'm stood at the corner of the floor thinking about the skill that I'm going to perform. I'm not thinking about what I'm going to have for my lunch. I'm not thinking about, you know, have I got any bills to pay? I'm totally focused, you know. And this is why I think people succeed and they don't. Yeah. And let's think about school as well. I'm going to give another example. Why is it some kids in school, like my best mate, do really well and get A stars? And I went through school and I got C's, D's and E's. And yet I sat next to this kid all the way through my educational journey, primary school, high school, you know. And what tends to happen is, when that happens, the volatile parent rocks up at the school or the gym and say, hang on, how come, you know, Craig's best friend, Daniel, he's done so well, he's got A stars, or he's won all these medals, and Craig can barely string a sentence together. Well, it only works if you apply the thing called purposeful practice. Yeah. And that basically means it's not just about turning up. Yeah. And this is what I think a lot of people do, not just in sport, but in life. They just turn up. And turning up, unfortunately, doesn't get you much. Yeah. When I think back about my time in school, I just turned up. I was looking for distractions, mainly anything I could do other than the schoolwork. My school friend Daniel, yeah, he applied himself. When I think back, he sat and he listened to the teacher and he was always ready to go. Now, I only applied myself when I found something I really loved doing, which was my gymnastics. So I think it's no point just turning up to your class, to your swim lesson, to your tennis session, to a session with you, Graham. You probably, you know, you've got people that turn up because the parents have told them to come and see you and go, oh, God, you know. And you could probably tell after the first session whether you're going to make a difference with them or not, because they're not in the right space.
Yeah.
They haven't got the headspaces, I'm here. And, you know, I made sure, even when I was really tired for a training session, there's always something you can do when you're exhausted. It's maybe work on your flexibility. So you know what, I'm exhausted. Let's leave that triple back today because it's a really big skill and I need to be really on point. You know what, I could go to the pommel horse because one, I'm not that good on the pommel horse, and if I fall off, I'm not going to kill myself, you know. And this comes from inside as well a little bit, because we know, you know, yes, I'm not going to be on point to do this, but it's better than picking my bag up and going home. Because you can guarantee if you pick your bag up and go home, there'll be some of the gymnasts that'll be staying, you know. So I think this talent thing is just thrown out there a little bit too easy. Your talented kids are generally the kids that are a bit bigger than other people. You always have this really big kid in school who smashes everybody at the 100 meters. But guess what? As we know in testing, this kid will hit his growth maximum, you know, by a certain age. And little Johnny, it wasn't that very good at, you know, didn't have the power, but had great technique. He's the one that's, you know, is it the tortoise and the hare story, you know, because later on he'll catch him. And I tend to find with my experiences, the kids that are really big and powerful, they're a bit lazy. So they're not willing to put the work on because they know they can rock up at sports day, and because genetically they're a lot bigger than everybody else, bang, gone. Yeah. You and me both know that does not happen at a high level.
No, I agree. And we've got this program that we run called Optimal State, and it's about learning to maximize every opportunity you have, but every day. And that's really difficult because if you are the biggest kid or the fastest kid, then actually rocking up and winning makes you feel great. But you are such a big fish in such a small pond. So how do you really work on that? Okay, well, this is great. You're winning, but you're not necessarily talented because actually this optimal state now is decreasing because of your work ethic is low, because of your mindset, your focus, your concentration is low, but because your evolution of skills and ability is not actually improving because you're winning now. And winning is not about talent. It's not necessarily about mindset. You're right. It's about that moment. And if I'm the biggest kid or the fastest kid, or mom and dad took me to the athletics club for 4 years and nobody else has ever been, I'm obviously going to win. It's the length of time, isn't it? It's the journey.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. It's that big fish in a little pond, you know, and I think this is where the coaching has developed so much in this country. We've got the coaching side down, but I still think there's a lot around the mental side of sport, the psychology bit, which is really needs working on. Because if you've got a good coach, what they should say to them when they rock up the club and go, well, actually, yeah, you're winning because of this, but actually, do you know by the time you're this age, little Johnny over there will be the same size as you?
Yeah.
You know, and you need to give examples, you know, and actually, look how hard he works. So do you think realistically, and I think I got better at that as a coach because you almost give them examples and put it back to them to go, well, this is the program.
And
you know.
parents need to know that as well, Craig, because have the biggest influence, especially on younger kids, than all of us do at an early age. It transcends to become coaches tend to be more important further down the line, but parents are so valuable as a commodity, yet they're either underutilized, underinformed, or maybe they just don't care. They just want to see kind of little Johnny being on the podium at 8, and it's the journey is so much bigger than that.
Yeah, you're right there. And I think if you get I remember, so mine's a farming background, and my dad thinks he knows quite a few things. And I remember one day my coach came down to the farm, and my dad's in the milking parlour, and he's milking the cows. And I thought this was brilliant. And he said to me, David, don't you think you should maybe milk that one before the other one? And do you think you should do this? And my dad looked at him and went, yeah, point taken. I'll keep out of it. Because everybody's a brilliant coach, aren't they?
Absolutely.
Have a balcony there, and that was one of the bugbears of my coaches. We have an open viewing policy here, and a lot of gyms don't. And I get it, but I also think you're right. If parents aren't informed and educated, they can be more dangerous.
Yeah.
And they're part of the team that you need to bring on board. And so even when I coached at the gym I used to coach at, I had a very open policy. One, for safeguarding, to protect myself, but so they could see, actually, I was fed up of saying, your son, because I coach men's gymnastics, doesn't work hard. And this is why when he goes to competition, he finishes last. Actually, if you're watching that, you can see.
Yeah.
So don't give me a hard time as a coach. We set the program. If he wants to sit in the corner, and twiddle thumbs or whatever he's doing, I can only say, this is it, and support them. So I think you're right. I think we really need to educate the parents, because here they say, I don't want them peering over the balcony and coaching the kids. I said, well, you're the coach. So what you need to do is go up onto the balcony and have a word with them, or maybe have a meeting, if you're smart, when they join, and say, this is how we do here, and everybody wants to help, I'm sure they do, and they want the best for the kids. But I think it can be so misguided. You're right there. And I think there's nothing more dangerous than bad parenting. I know one of my friends used to get beaten by his father. Yeah. If he had a bad session, he was the coach and a parent, and pull up at traffic lights and just punch him in the stomach out of nowhere because he trained poorly. We've really got to think, coaches, the psychological effects we have on the people that we're working with, and as a parent. Yeah. I don't want to coach my kids in gymnastics because I want to be their dad.
Yeah.
That's it, And I think a lot of this, and there will be parents watching, I want you to question the reasons why you've got your kids into sport. Yeah. You probably see it. I think football probably one of the worst, because, they want the kids to be famous, but mainly, it's the trappings, the money, the lifestyle, and I think it's really sad if you damage your relationship with your children because of your dreams and aspirations, and you probably see it all the time.
And that statistic, Craig, by the way, when you're talking about parents seeing their kids as maybe that cash cow, the Ferrari and the successful holidays and stuff, with football academies is 0.001%. So it's very small. It's very small. Yeah. So let's have a lot of fun. Let's build a lot of fundamentals. Let's make sure that kids learn a little bit about themselves as people and evolve as people. And let's be that type of coach. And that means that we're not putting any limits on them, but we're giving them all the tools that they're going to need to succeed either in sport or maybe in life at the same time.
Yeah, I think that's key. My wife's from athletics background, a high jumper, so she's obviously a bit taller than me, and my little lad's 2.5, and I've got a little girl, 5 months, so she's not really doing much at the minute. But he's all over the place. You know, it's amazing if I jump to the gym and people go, "Oh wow, you know, he's going to be good in it with you two as parents. Are you getting him into this? Are you getting him to that?" I'm like, "Nope."
Yeah.
I said, "He's just going to do what he wants," and I think that's quite refreshing. But it takes a lot of confidence as an adult and a parent, you know, to say, the expectations, there's no expectations on my kids. You know, if you want to do something, I will do as much as I can to support you and get you in the best place and get you in front of the best people. That's as far as it goes. But there'll be none of this, you know, pushing and pushing. Yes, there'll be times that are hard when we want to give up. There were a couple of times when I was doing gymnastics, but I think it was probably my coach, not my parents pushing me. I mean, fortunately, my dad wanted me to become a farmer, so the pressure was to stay, not do gymnastics. So that was all right. I guess I was really lucky. I didn't have that. My parents weren't that pushy. You know, they were just pleased that I love doing it. Yes, they liked the success of me doing well, but you know, I never got home and went, "You trained bad." You know, we'd never have any rows at the dinner table. You know, and I bet these hundreds, if not thousands of them, you know, and certainly my friend, you know, it's definitely damaged him post his career, you know, in his relationships.
Yeah, it's sad because sport can give you so much, but it can take so much away as well.
It can.
Craig, I just want to say thanks very much for our chat. It's always great catching up with you. What I wanted to do is ask you one more question, if that's all right with you. It looks very busy behind in terms of equipment. What's going on? Where are you? What have you done?
All right. So this is actually, I'm going to touch something because, you know, I talk forever. When parents say to me, you know, they bring a kid to the gym and go, "Are they going to make it?" You know, and like you say, 8 years old, you know, how am I going to tell you?
Yeah.
And I'll go, "Well, I can't tell you." I said, "But what I can tell you is they will develop through sport skills for life. And that's crucial. Sports people are committed, they're dedicated, they're resilient, they're passionate. Yeah. These are the traits that if you look at any successful business person, they will have, without a doubt. You know, and there's a really good study done through the Dame Kelly Holmes Legacy Trust where they took people that have been through university, graduates, and put them in a job with ex-sporting professionals with no qualifications. And no surprise who came out on top. It was the ex-athletes because of the skill set we have. You know, you've got it. We talked about all the things that you've been doing in lockdown. So I've been in lockdown with my gymnastics centre. So here, I wanted to open a centre not around performance. We have a little bit of performance, but through my little lad, and this was before my girl came along, I wanted a place where they could come with families. So I set up, and this is 3 years ago in the making. So yet again, you need patience, you know, and that resilience, and you need that determination, because this was probably about the 5th building I looked at. And my naivety, when I first started this, going, "Yeah, we'll have a gym. I'll be up and running in 6 months, no problem. I'm going to do this, that, and the other." I had a meeting with Sport England, and they're going, "Great, you've got all these ideas. You need to put it down, you know, onto a spreadsheet," because I'm all over the place. And I found it a bit frustrating, but it's so important because you need a plan, you need a project. And so to find the right building, to find the right people, it took 3 years. And we opened on the 5th of January this year. My little girl was born 5 days later. So it was a bit manic. People said, "Why did you do that? You know, are you crazy?" And I went, "Well, the gym took a lot longer than I'd expected." So what I focus on here really is families and fundamental movement, because I think gymnastics is a great base for whatever sport you're going. If you look at a school sports day, the person that tends to win everything generally has a background in gymnastics. You know, they're the kids that they go because they're well conditioned. Now, maybe not later on, but certainly in the early years, if you've got a kid doing gymnastics, they can transition into other things quite easily. And so I set up this gym. We've got a really cool place up on the balcony behind me. We've got a coffee shop up there so parents can come and chill out. I've got a studio, fitness studio. One of the things that I found really difficult when I had little Dexter was I couldn't go to the gym. And I know I don't look in too bad shape at the minute, but I am. I'm not in great physical shape, you know. So what I realised was, what is the problem for young parents to become physically active? And the problem was, you take your kid to go and do a sport, and it generally, you know, there's no fitness suite on site. So through there, upstairs, I've got a fitness gym. I've also got a studio up there where we do yoga and Pilates and all mindfulness classes. Because I think that's really important for everybody now. We definitely don't do enough for ourselves, you know. And as a parent, and you've got a little girl, I've got two, lots of people out there. When do we actually have time for us? You know, when do you have time for Graham? You know, and people say, well, is it important? Absolutely. Because if you're in the right headspace, not only does it make me a better manager of my staff, but it also makes me a better parent. It makes me a better husband. My wife might not agree to that, but, you know, but it makes me a better son. It makes me for my mum and my dad, you know, and a better brother for my sister. And I think this is where the vision for this centre came, is I wanted to create a space for the whole family, but where people could go out and have a bit of time for themselves to make them better people. And I know we've all been locked up, but we need to get this, you know, into perspective a little bit. You know, most people have been locked up 100 days, but imagine, Graham, having 100 days at home with no TV and no communication with our friends. We're lucky now. Technology is amazing. You know, you can FaceTime, messenger people. You know, my old gymnastic coach, he's not in a good way. He's isolating. Well, I pick up the phone. You know, I can FaceTime people at the other side of the world. Yeah. You know, and say, how you doing? I remember our ancestors. You think our great parents, grandparents, great grandparents. You know, wonder what it would like in London in the Blitz when there were aeroplanes bombing. You know, and you had to hide underground, and you'd come up and in the wreckage looking for your family and your friends. Well, they're still here. We just had to be locked in our houses. And I think, you know, it's all this negativity of going, you know, oh, I'm locked down. I've never done so many jobs in my house.
I know.
You know what I mean?
I've done eight online courses for my own personal development. I've run 120 miles in the garden. There's just so much to do. I've been thinking, what have I been doing for the last 10 years? Because actually I'm doing all the things now for 10 years. I've been going, I wish I had time. I wish I had time. And if we don't look after ourselves, if I'm not on my A game, you are 100% right. How do we expect everybody else to be on their A game?
Yeah, and it's funny because I've been going to the park a bit, and you overhear people, and where we go, we tend to, you know, there's lots of people about, you know, with little children, and it's amazing how many people were talking about changing what they do in their life, because it's given chance just to stop. Because don't you think, up until the lockdown, we were at warp speed, you know, and young people more than ever have had mental health problems because of the way the world is. And it's actually forced people to go, just calm down. Let's take a minute. Let's think about what's really important, you know. And it's important, our family and our friends, and we don't need as much money as we thought. I've hardly spent anything. You know, I live on very little, and I realise I can live, you know, on very little. And I spent every night bathing my kids. Every night since lockdown. That's golden. Yeah. You know, because my little girls just started to splash the water. You know, and you go, wow, you know. And my little lad tries to drown me in the bath. And I'm thinking, fantastic, you know. But these are the memories that my dad, from his background of farming, he was working all the time, you know. And when he comes up, you know, and I see him and I'll go, I've only built a relationship really with my father since I've done the gym, because he's retired and come here and worked with me. And through lockdown, we've chatted, you know, and I think it's been great. To be honest, I can say it's been brilliant for me, you know, apart from the tragedy of, you know, of people dying. But I think it's been a pretty good thing, you know, and people take stock.
No, Craig, really interesting. I wish you all the luck with your centre. As soon as we get out of Shieldon, I will come and visit and say hi and have a coffee, because I'll probably need one by then.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I do miss, but never mind. I don't need one. I don't need one. Daddy's cup with a cup of tea in is fine.
I've got my thermos here. Yeah.
Brilliant. But thanks. Always fab to catch up with you as always, you know, in terms of your energy and your passion for sport. We have to find talent, not necessarily in the structural way that the dictionary would, but you don't have to. We just have to know what we believe in and how we describe it and how we start to define it. But great luck with the centre. You're doing a fab job, and I'm sure we will touch base soon. I have to go. Please subscribe and share, because allegedly that's what the cool kids do these days. So let's do that. But Craig, thanks very much, and we'll speak soon.
Cheers. All the best, guys. Stay safe.